So we're going live.
Oh, we're live, we're live.
We're live. It always catches me unaware. It should do a countdown or something. Nice to see you all, and welcome to lovely Dr. Robert Lefever. I'm Claire Kennedy, and this is the gorgeous Kevin Kennedy. I'm pointing to him as if you can see my screen as it is, but I'm sure you can't. So we do these little Wednesday chats, and we call them Kennedy Street Live. And basically that all around recovery. So we have recovery talks, we have all things that are related to recovery, really, because we're really passionate as a family and as a charity about everything that's wonderful about recovery, and how people do need a lot of hope and need at the moment. So Robert came on the show a couple of weeks ago. In fact, I think it was about a month ago, and we've had so many positive comments, Robert, about your coming on the show and having a chat with us. So we thank you for that. A lot of people really, really enjoyed listening to you, and I'm sure lots of people will come back today knowing that you're on. So so before we go to Dr. Robert and have another chat with him, I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of what we're doing, just in case you don't know. So we're running a very small charity in Brighton called KennedyStCiO, Kevin and myself, and we've got a board of trustees, and we've got a team of amazing helpers and volunteers. And over the lockdown, we've been running a recovery helpline, and where we've been virtually assisting people into recovery, because a lot of people have had a lot of need. And what's emerged from that whole experience, I've been volunteering and doing not-for-profit work for 22 years. But what's emerged over the last 12 weeks is this huge need for people who are seeking a solution but don't know where to start. So what our helpline's done is it's give them that starting point, and we would love to be able to continue to grow this charity to become a national offering. We have been helping people nationally, and we still do help people nationally. So if you've got a problem, or you want to start a conversation around where to start, please don't hesitate to get in contact. We'll do everything that we can to connect you to whatever route of recovery that you want to be connected to. So that's our charity, and we have a fundraiser as well for the month of August, which is going to help us to generate some non-ring-fence funds that we can put into keeping this helpline going. So it's called the Road to Recovery fundraiser, and I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it later. I don't really want to go on about it too much at this point. Maybe we'll talk about it a little bit more later on, after Robert has introduced himself. I'll let Kev introduce yourself first, though, Kev, if you don't mind, and then you can hand over to Robert, and you can he's disappeared, Robert. His router must have gone off. So, Kev, you tell us a little bit more about what Robert's going to be talking about when he comes back.
Hello, my name's Kevin Kennedy. I am the patron of Kennedy Street. You probably may know me from Coronation Street many, many years ago, 16 to be precise. And I help out with I am the face. I am the face and the poster boy for Kennedy Street, which, as you can see, is the beautiful face. And today we're going to be talking about something which is very close to my heart, which is the arts and being productive in immersing yourself in either drawing or creative stuff, being creative. If you're being creative during your addiction, or being creative whilst you're in lockdown, it's a great help for mental health. Personally, I found it a perfect job actually for an addict, because I got to be other people for 2 hours. Either on stage or on television. I think as an addict, I think there's a bit of self-loathing that goes on, especially in early recovery. And I found that my job was a great help. It was a bit daunting going back to acting after being in rehab and what have you. Is that all those thoughts about, am I still able to do it? Am I any good? All the doubts that you have after an illness like that. And I'm happy to say, I think I came back a certainly more in touch actor. I certainly more sponge-like and more aware of things around me, and looking into characters, I could really relate to a lot of aspects of different characters and their weaknesses and their idiosyncrasies, because I was in touch with myself, and so that really helped. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Because
when Dr. Robert gets he's got technical issues, unfortunately.
But Dr. Robert, not only is he a brilliant bloke and a great advocate of recovery, he's also a musician, and he writes endless music. And we're going to talk to him today about that. But while we're waiting, why doesn't Claire tell you about our charity for the month of August?
So, okay, let me get my, where is it? I'll get you my flyer all prepared here today. So this is what we're doing for the month of August. It's called the Road to Recovery, and it's a 5K challenge. You can join at any point during this month of August. It's a virtual event. Like I said earlier, we're trying to get fundraise to be able to afford to continue to operate this helpline that we've started during lockdown. So if you want to join virtually, basically go to our website, which will be on our underneath on our faces here now, and you can sign up and you can make a donation. And we ask you to partake and rather than coming to an event, what we do is we ask you to, so if you're in Manchester and you want to do 5K on our behalf, you make a donation of £5, and then you do your run, you walk, you'll swim, whatever it is you want to do, whatever challenge you want to set yourself. And we ask you to take pictures or little videos of yourself, and we ask you to upload them to our charity Facebook page. We send you a welcome pack as well when you make a donation and when you've registered, and then you can feel part of it. And what we do is we have one of our fabulous volunteers, Jill. She is collating all of the 5Ks that people are doing, and she's working out how far collectively we would travel if we were doing this together. So will we get as far as London? Will we get as far as Paris? Will we get as far as Berlin? Or who knows? So, but we need your help, basically. We need your help. Over the last, I'd say it's more than 12 weeks. I keep saying 12 weeks, but we've been in lockdown now. How long have we been in lockdown now, Kev?
5 months, I think, isn't it? March, April, May, June, July, August. 6 months.
Oh my gosh, so it's way over. So let's just put it this way. In the first 12 weeks of lockdown, we never used to run a telephone helpline as part of our charity. We used to go out into the workplace and we used to train businesses and help them understand what recovery looked like in the community. And we also ran a community project where we would help people in recovery to get into employment, to upskill themselves, to feel better about themselves, to get involved in, different activities, helping us. But then lockdown hit and it was like, oh my gosh, we can't do the community stuff, we can't do the workplace stuff, what's going to happen? And then what happened is the telephone just started ringing off the line, and we went from 5 inquiries a week, which we used to get maybe by email, to over 100 telephone calls a week. I mean, that was an underestimate, 100 telephone. So in the first 12 weeks of lockdown, we received I think in total about 750 calls, and it was just unbelievable. It was just, the need was phenomenal. It was from all walks of life. It was mums that were at home with children. It was frontline workers. We got a lot of calls from frontline workers. We're still getting a lot of calls from frontline workers who were struggling. So so what we do is we don't act as clinicians. All of our telephone operators are trained recovery coaches who have all got a lived experience of recovery themselves. Some of them have got training, some of them are trained counsellors, some of them are trained psychologists, but we don't act as clinicians. What we act as are recovering addicts who signpost people to the most appropriate place near them. And if that's in the community where they can get continuity care, like one of the 12-step fellowships, that's where we will try and connect you to. And because of the difficulties people have had connecting to those fellowships because they don't know of them, because of they're anonymous, what we've been doing is we've been acting as like virtual chaperones, really, and just talking people through Zoom, talking people through how to make contact, how to access those meetings online. It's been amazing, and we've integrated, I'd say, over 130 people into a recovery process, into one of the recovery fellowships, or into treatment, or into therapy, whatever it is that their route of recovery is. So we'd love to be able to continue this type of work, and we think that there's a real need. We've seen that there's a real need, and we think that will continue. And I see Dr. Robert's back. He's back in. There he is.
Hey.
Sorry about that, Robert. I just thought I'd carry on chattering away.
What I've done is to turn off my iPad, which uses more juice, and so I'm now just on my iPhone. So we should be fine from now on. We have difficulty here because in South Kensington, where I live, they keep digging up the roads, and they dig up all the Wi-Fi connections. So we have constant problems with it. But here I am today, and I'm delighted to be with you again. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're very welcome. I was just talking about the importance of creativity during recovery, and I was talking about my own experiences as an actor, and how I found it very comforting. Almost the perfect job for a recovering addict is to be an actor, because I got to be someone else for 2 hours. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, I think, as I said, I think there's a bit of self-loathing that goes on in recovery, and the idea of being somebody else is very good, because when we're in the depths of despair and we're in our disease, we would be anybody rather than ourselves.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
And I think you find yourself, if you're in a pub and everyone's got an Irish accent, you'd find yourself talking in an Irish accent, anything to belong, anything to find yourself in a different world than the one you're actually inhabiting. So could you tell us, Doctor, firstly, how important do you think this is to recovery, creativity, and what you do? I know you're very creative yourself, and how you find that to help you.
Well, I think recovery is fundamentally about three things: spontaneity. Let's do it now. Let's give it a go. It might go wrong, but let's do it. And so action is the magic word. The second is creativity, which I'll come to. And the third is enthusiasm. We've got to see the light in people's eyes. And you've got to have it in our own eyes if we're going to attract other people. And if you meet this chap in a meeting, I haven't had a drink for 20 years. My response is, why on earth not? What's the quality of your life? Where's the creativity? Where's the spark? Where's the enthusiasm, the spontaneity? So now, focusing on creativity particularly, I find that I'm created by nature. I always was, and I think that's true for all addicts. I think we were born into difficult circumstances, and we had to try to make sense of a crazy world. So we looked here, we looked there, we looked everywhere, and we became very creative. It isn't that creative people become addicts. It's that addicts learn how to be creative. And once learned it, we can be creative in two directions. In my using days, I was wonderfully creative. I found different ways in which I could use. I found different substances, different behaviors, different relationships. I used anything here, there, and everywhere to change the way I felt. So I was highly creative, but it was all in the wrong direction. And it was only when I was flat face down that I recognized that I had to be creative in a different way and learn to do something more beautiful. Now, as far as my specific creativity is concerned, I always wanted to be a professional musician. I announced to my school when I was age 16, I'd like to be a professional musician. And they said, you can't, it's for homosexuals and we don't allow that sort of thing here. So that was British private schools in those days, and maybe it still is. Either way, I got myself a singing scholarship, and so I could read anything I wanted. And I said, I'll read music. And Cambridge University said, yes, fine. And so 1 week later, they said, not fine. And I said, why not? They said, well, you're no good. I said, well, I never had any lessons. And they said, well, we don't teach at that level, dear. Why don't you go to London and go to one of the colleges? Anyway, so I became a doctor instead. And that was highly creative. I really had to work hard on learning the science subjects from scratch. I did maths, higher maths, and physics at school, but I'd never done any biology or chemistry. Anyway, so my creative urge went into my science learning. And I didn't like hospitals at all. I found them impersonal. The interesting case in bed 4. That's not my style. I want to know her name. I want to know where she lives, circumstances are. But when I entered general practice, that's exactly what I found. And I loved it. I absolutely loved being a GP the whole of my life. I was a GP for 45 years. And then when I created Rehab, again, I absolutely loved it. I felt these are my people. I belong alongside addicts. And I didn't understand that because I hadn't understood my own addiction at that time. But I went to Hazelden in Minnesota onto a program called Professionals in Residence. And I thought they would introduce me to the staff and teach me various techniques, instead of which they opened the door to one of the units, pushed me in and closed the door. So I was stuck in with the patients, which is exactly where I belonged. I may be a doctor, I may be the director of a major rehab, but I addict. And that's where I need to recognize whatever I've achieved in my life, I'm an addict, pure and simple, common or garden. And I can, once I accept that, then I can be creative in all sorts of ways, in beneficial ways.
That's do you think that, oh, hang on.
Oh, hang on a minute. He's muted himself. Kev, you need to unmute yourself. Sorry about that.
Do you think the obsessional behaviour of the average common or garden addict? I mean, I can only speak personally, but I do get obsessed with in the creative process. I find it a great release because I'm not in my own head. Do you think that trait of being obsessive helps with the creative journey?
Well, I think it does. Insofar as when I'm composing my music, I have to put the dots in the right place. If I don't, and I've got music all over the place, it isn't music. Other musicians can't read it. So I have to be obsessive. I have to get the key signature right, the time signature right, the bars in the right place, and so on. All the technical side, I have to take that for granted so that other musicians can read it. I'm delighted to say that in next weekend, the first piece of music that I've ever had recorded is being performed and recorded by a set of professional musicians. I'm going to be a composer, a real one. Now, at the tender age of 83, I've waited a fair length of time, but wow, just watch me now. This is traveling. So I think this is the point. We don't have to worry about how old we are or what our previous history has been and how much damage there's been. Start now, whatever it is. Do something beautiful. And so that's what I'm doing with my music. I was a singer and a conductor of sorts, but I wasn't really any good. Whereas my composing's okay, but it'll be fascinating to hear it. So I don't know what you find, Kev. when you're playing your own stuff, do you recognize it?
Yeah, I find that when I'm playing, I really like playing other people's music, and that leads to me being more creative. And I do get obsessed. I get obsessed with a phrase that I can't get right. And I play it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah,
but it never, in my head, I'm not playing it over and over again. I'm sure Claire will tell you that she's heard the same phrase played over and over again. And once I've got it right, then I have to keep doing it to get it right. It's a bit like recovery. I just have to keep going until I've got that phrase right. Now, if you take off your addict hat and put your doctor hat on, is there any medical and that kind of hard fact that being creative does something to the brain? Is there hard evidence for that?
I think there's hard evidence for practice in anything. The London taxi drivers study showed that taxi drivers developed an enlargement of a particular part of their brain that finds the way around, the orienteering part. And 2 weeks after 2 years after they retired, it went back to its previous shape. So in other words, the brain is plastic. It learns through experience. And so that aspect, I think, is very important. And what you were describing just now, Kev, about, practicing that same bit again and again and again, is what makes you a better guitarist. And what I find is that as an active addict, I wanted the results now. I didn't want to bother with the practice. I want what I want when I want it, and I want it now. And I want all the results immediately. I don't want to bother with practice. Anyway, the end result of that was I wasn't any good. Whereas now I practice, and I'm getting better, and I'm loving it.
Yeah. I also find that performing as I do, I mean, I perform all the time. I've done numerous tours and West End stuff and what have you. And before, when I was active in addiction, when the curtain fell and I was full of the adrenaline, I wanted to keep that going. I needed to chase that feeling. I wanted to keep that feeling going all night, which meant obviously that then booze would get involved, going to clubs would get involved. And I find now, for example, I was doing We Will Rock You in the West End, and at the Dominion Theatre, which is a beautiful theatre. It's 2,000 people. And the show was marvelous, and it was a proper rocky, loud, boisterous show. And at the end of the show, when the curtain was up, we were taking the bows. I would enjoy all that adoration and the noise and the clapping, and I'd really accept it. And I'd really, yes, I deserve that. It was a job well done. Thank you very much. And I'd take the bow. But the difference is, I didn't want to chase the feeling afterwards. And in reality, I found it really lovely just to take all that, take the bow, and then go upstairs to my dressing room, take all the stuff off, put my hat on, get on the train back to Brighton. And 20 minutes later, I was just a normal bloke on the train going home. And I found great solace in that as well. The fact that I could leave it behind. Once I'd left the theatre, that was that, which is before I could never do.
Yes, you're absolutely right. You asked me to put on my doctor hat, but I wasn't wearing my doctor hat when I went to the Dominion Theatre to hear Meatloaf. So, that was living.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly like the show. I felt it was overdone, but that's just critical. I can't do what he could do. I can't get anywhere near it. And so I've got tremendous admiration for people who are professional performers. It's just not my skill. But I do my stuff in my way. So I think that's what's important, to be the person you really are, rather than try to pretend to be someone else. Well, as an actor, it's the same in that sense as my work as a GP. I would adjust my vocabulary, the way I approach people, the type of terms that I use, according to the patient who was with me. So you can't speak to an ambassador in the same way as you would speak to a housewife or a student or a visitor from a foreign country. I had to change to be available to each of those people and many others. So at the end of the day, I wondered who I was. Now, I've heard actors describe the same. They wonder who their real persona is. Well, I've had that experience as a GP, but nowadays, what I've recognized is I am Robert, whatever I'm doing. I'm Robert when I'm composing. I'm Robert when I'm doing my photographs. I'm Robert when I'm speaking. I'm Robert when I'm counseling. I'm Robert with my wife. You know, lots of Roberts. And I think that's rather fun. So, you know, to try to be just one person in a box with one on it, which is what people have tried to do to me, I think is ridiculous. I love being all those Roberts. And Claire, I expect that you've had a lot of Claires.
Yeah.
I was listening to your introduction just now. Golly, the way that you are able just to draw people in, that's magical. What a talent.
Oh, bless you. Thank you, Robert. And do you know something? I think what recovery has taught me is that it's okay to be me. I'm unashamedly me now. You know, all of my little quirks, all of my little, you know, mannerisms, all of my passions, and all of the things that I found really, really interesting over the years. And some of them, you know, I've shied away from because I found them a bit overwhelming. What recovery? I'm going to have to silence Kevin because he's got a problem with his mic. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it is Kevin. Oh, it is Kevin. Yeah, sorry, Kev. Yeah, so, you know, I think recovery's taught me that over the last 20 years, it's okay to be Claire, unashamedly. And what the last 20 years has taught me is I've got loads of gifts, loads and loads of gifts. And I think that's been my job, is to find out what those gifts are properly and to nurture them, to let go of some that aren't really serving me, you know, that I thought I wanted to develop, but really aren't my cup of tea, aren't really meant to be. Have been my doing and not, you know, not really what's intended. Yeah, so I think
my take is that although, you know, I acknowledge that I'm an addict, I don't nowadays do addictive things. My last use of any mood-altering substance was 12th of October 1984. So I'm 35 years abstinent, but I'm still an addict. No, it's really important. I'm still an addict. The last meeting I went to, a Zoom meeting, was this morning. 7:30, I was sitting here with my friends from the Zoom AA meeting, and I was completely at home.
Yeah.
Because they're my mates. They're people I feel totally, you know, in cahoots with. They're addicts just like me. And that's very necessary for me. I need the meetings and I need to work the 12 steps every day. I do steps 10, 11, and 12. That's what keeps us well. That's what it says in the big book. It says, these are the steps we took. In other words, this is what we actually did. We don't get better by going to meetings. We meet our friends and we counter our denial. But if we're going to get better, we need to work the steps. And that's what I find has really enabled me to be the creative person I am now. Now, as far as my music was concerned, which is the central focus of my creativity at the moment, I had never composed anything until 2 years ago. I was 81 before I started. A friend of mine said, what have you ever composed? And I said, nothing. He said, anybody can compose. You sit down at the keyboard and see what comes out of your fingers. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go. Wow. You know, since that time, I do musicals, an opera, 2 song cycles, some dance music. And I'm just working at the moment on I've just finished a gospel song, which is going to be recorded next Friday. Me writing gospel songs? Why not? And that's the crucial issue for anybody. Why not? Just do it. Ask yourself, well, I've never done it. Why not? Try now. Why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what recovery's done for me. It's set me free from any shackles of self-doubt. And everything I do in good faith, everything. And so when the lockdown happened and I realised something had to be done, I was getting these phone calls and I needed to do something different. I just did it. It was like, well, just do it, Claire. Just do whatever it is that's put in front of you, and if it works out, it's the bigger picture. If it doesn't work out, well, you've not lost anything. You've done what you thought was the right thing, and that's how my creativity manifests. So I'm not a great musician. I am a great artist, actually. I love art, and recovery has taught me about being. Allowing myself to take that time to nurture, because I feel like when I'm doing art, I get lost in the moment, in the piece of art that I'm creating, and it's a very mindfulness. It's a very mindful act. I can't be anywhere else other than in the moment creating that piece of work. I love art. I love creating. I don't do enough of it. I really do need to make more time to do more art, to be honest.
Yes, I was wondering whether to go back to pencil drawing. I enjoyed painting, just drawing with pencil and proper paper, some bridges. I was up in Scotland in Peebles, and the most wonderful stone bridges, and I just did some drawings of them. I'd never drawn before. Well, I've never drawn since, but why not? Well, one of the answers is because I found that photography enables me to express that side of me. My mother was a watercolor artist, and she used to do gold leaf inlays on manuscripts for soldiers who had been killed in the First World War. That's how my mother earned her living, doing these memorial scrolls, and she was wonderful. And she was doodling all over the place. We had the most wonderful telephone directories, because in those days, in the volume E to K, we'd find a snowdrop growing out of the E and a mouse peeping out from behind the K, because Mum was on the phone and she was doodling all the time. And we really should have kept those phone books as works of art. So each one of us has our own skill. And I could go back to drawing. I don't think I'll take up painting, but my photography, I've published 7 books of photographs. I go with my wife, who runs a company that specializes in hiking guides. So she dragged to these places. We go to Tenerife and Madeira and the south of France and so on. Oh, it's a hard life. We stay in these hotels, and it's very difficult. I'm sure you understand. Anyway, I'm the photographer. So I take about 100 photographs, and we'll keep about 5 of them, because the great advantage, an iPhone is a wonderful camera, but also it doesn't cost you anything. It's not like the old days when you had reels of film. So I could take a lot of photographs and then crop them and shape them and fashion them in the same way as an artist like you, Claire, would shape what you're doing. And I know I've seen a picture of Picasso overpainting his work. Something that began this way finishes up with something completely different as he paints over and over and over. Guernica, his famous painting, the war painting, was extraordinary in the number of trial runs he had at that before it finished up as the wonderful work we know it is today. So I think that's another important thing of just doing it, going over and over and over. And coming back to something you were saying, Kev, my favorite stage character, or actually a fictional character, was Groucho Marx's distinguished amateur brain surgeon. Now, there are some occupations you really don't want an amateur anywhere near it. You want a thoroughgoing professional. And so the distinguished amateur brain surgeon was very much a joke. But oh heavens, when I think of all the things I've tried to be and failed gloriously. I've been a distinguished amateur farmer, a distinguished amateur politician, a distinguished, you name it, tried it, and I failed. But that's the important thing. And if we fail, it just means they didn't have that particular talent. Yes, and you find out what you are good at.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one thing that I find really interesting, and because of the nature of the work that I've been doing in the last 22 years, I was 22 years yesterday, 22 years clean and sober, and And thank you.
Yes.
I give myself a little clap as well. I keep thinking it's the 1st of August, my birthday, but all my other friends that were there when I first started out, they always send me a message on my actual birthday and say, no, it's today, Claire. So yes, it was yesterday. But what's happened over the last 22 years is I've met some amazing people that have used creativity as part of their community project. So I've got friends, a friend of mine called Paul, who runs a project in Chester, and it's called Fallen Angel. I think you've ever heard of it, Robert. But what he was an ex prima ballerina who had ended up with an addiction problem, and he got lost, and he came through it, and he got into recovery, and he really wanted to continue to dance, but he wanted to do it differently, and he realised that actually dancing had allowed him to express his emotions that he couldn't articulate, and he was able to dance them. So what he did was he started working with some guys off the street, really hard to reach people that are really struggling, men in prison, that are prolific offenders and prolific drug addicts that keep going back into prison. So he would go into prisons and he would do these free workshops, and he would teach them about dance and how they could express how they felt about their addiction through movement. And it was like a revelation. It was unbelievable. Have you ever heard of that project, Robert?
Yes, I'm very much in favour of therapy and music therapy, art therapy, sorts of things, provided it's not a substitute for the steps. The steps of AA and now applied to NA and OA and all the other A's, that we get well, but how we express ourselves is vital. Otherwise, we're just zombies. And what you're describing is someone who found his outlet in dance. I think he'd be probably delighted to be called a ballerina, but never mind. I've known many people. David Charkham does summer therapy. He's got a lot of experience of that. My two closest friends at the moment are much younger than me. And what I have in common with them, the creative urge. Sol Golden Saturn, wonderful name. And he's a wonderful man. He's an artist. He's down in Hastings or St. Leonard's, sitting on a groin and drawing pictures of the waves as they come in. And, he's up there with the Japanese waves. So, and Sol is also painting the fire station in his road. Those of you who may be familiar with the Firestone, that artwork, which covers the whole of the face of the fire station, that is Sol. And he's a most wonderful creative artist. My other really close friend is Kem Yusuf. So Sol is from Malawi. Kem is a Turkish Cypriot. So I don't know where I find these people, but what attracts me to them is their creativity. And Kem is my composition mentor. He doesn't teach me. I think there might be a better way of doing that. Have a look at it if you try it this way. And again, Kem is simply magical. He's a wonderful teacher. He's on the staff of the composition department, the junior of the Academy of Music. So he's right up there, real professional. The most lovely thing about Kem is what he did this morning. He got a rabbit. He's got a rabbit, and her name is Dot. And so there he is with Dorothy. He showed me a video of it early this morning. Dorothy bounding around his living room, and he allowing her to express herself creatively in the same way as he does. They do it slightly differently. I'm afraid that Dorothy will probably start eating his manuscript paper, but never mind. She is company. And what's important about that is that for people who are working in library, it's in the first year we get a plant, and if the plant is alive at the end of the first year, then we get a pet. And if the pet is alive at the end of the second year, then you're ready for a human relationship. And that's very wise for any of us. Once I got into my taste of abstinence, I've never looked back. But, I had a lot of madness and a lot of baggage that I had to use the 12 steps to put behind me so that I could move on to the creative person I am now. And it does take 2 years to get rid of the negativity and start putting in something positive. My friend George Christo did the work on that. He produced, graphs which showed that our self-esteem gets gradually better over 2 years, and our negativity gets gradually less over 2 years. And at that point, when we meet, when they both those lines meet at 2 years, then we're ready to really move forward. But of course, as addicts, we're very impatient. We want instant results. And it's just being patient for that first 2 years as things get better and better and better, and the bad things get less and less and less. Then we can move on. And I think that's what's really beautiful, because that gives us the opportunity to be creative. And during my professional life, I created the first NHS group practice in the South Kensington area. I was a passionate believer in the NHS, and I set up this group practice, and the three of us took on 60 new patients every week. And my God, we worked hard. And it was wonderful. We just loved it. Unfortunately, government regulations meant that it was very difficult to stay alive financially. And so when the Labour government came in and gave doctors a 5% pay rise and the staff a 30% pay rise, we couldn't survive. And so we split the practice, and I started doing private work, and they cut down on the staff and the processes. It's perfectly understandable. Their children were younger than mine. But then, I got the opportunity to be creative, and I created a diagnostic center. I had my own X-ray equipment and ultrasound, my own little laboratory, my own physiotherapist, my own nurse practitioner, my own little pharmacy. It was a one-stop shop. And I loved it. And so did the patients. And I gave all my National Health Service patients access to that for free. Because it didn't cost much just to have the price of the film or the blood test reagent. The costs were already there in the equipment and the staff. And so, that was a wonderful time. And what I was trying to do was to say to the government, look, this is what a general practice could be about, because then you've got the enthusiasm of the doctor and the nurse, and you're saving the patient a lot of hassle. Their time is important, just the doctor's time. They are saving time as they don't have to go off to the hospital for all these things. And also, I could show my patients the result right there in front of them. I could show them the X-ray. I could show them down the microscope. I'd say, look at that. You can see it yourself. And so we had an enormous amount of fun. Now, that enthusiasm is missing in general practice today. It's so sad that we're still having general practice as a place for prescriptions and certificates. And that's not what it's about. You've got highly trained doctors, highly trained staff, and you're using them as if they were just robots. And that doesn't work. So the creativity in medical practice, I think, is essential. We've got to get back that enthusiasm. The enthusiasm that the medical students had has gone after a relatively few years in general practice. They just write the prescriptions and see the next patient and so on. That's wrong. We've done something terrible to the NHS. We can worship it, but it doesn't work. Nobody else has followed it. People don't get the treatment they deserve. We have very poor outcome studies. If you compare cancer rates, cancer recovery rates in England to those in European countries, we rank very near the bottom of that. We're just not good. And yet we worship it. And we clap for carers. Of course we do clap for carers. And these are the people who are doing the work. But I don't clap for the institution. The NHS doesn't work, and it really does need a complete rethink. So somebody has really got to look at that and see what works and what doesn't, and work out why it works and why the other stuff doesn't. So creativity isn't something that's simply confined to the stage, as with Kev, or with the music that I do, or the wonderful speaking that you do. It's much broader than that. And I think addicts are ideally placed to bring out that creativity in other people, because we do it for ourselves. I can encourage other people to be creative because I've been there, done that, got the T-shirt. And so that way, I think we can all learn from each other. If I'm creative on my own, it's just not true. I have Kem, who's my inspiration as far as my composing is concerned. Sol, who's my inspiration as far as my photography is concerned. There are lots of people who I learn from day after day after day. And that's what I think is crucial, that we don't become something. We are a becoming. And the same is true for recovery. I wouldn't say I was in recovery, but I would say I was recovering. I'm in the process of examining how I behave and seeing where it can be improved.
Absolutely. And where you're growing and you're changing, and I completely agree with everything that you said. I'm not familiar with the third sector, as it's called, because I've never been involved. I've always worked in business, and I've only ever volunteered in the community, in the 12-step recovery community, and in the community just at large. And it was only since moving to Brighton that I registered as a not-for-profit, because I wanted to start a project in Brighton. And what I learned quite quickly was the third sector is full of acronyms and full of a lot of very scared people who are frightened of losing the job. And that's all that they talk about at meetings. So I would come storming in, whirlwind blondness, and with my creative thinking, and they would so we started having clinical commissioning groups. I'm sure you know of these clinical commissioning groups, and they would say that we've got this £12 million pot, and I'm thinking, brilliant, this money could absolutely transform communities. Why don't we set up these creative hubs where there is a general GP practice, but around it are all of these other amazing creative outlets like meditation, like art therapy, like a school for social entrepreneurs. That's what I've discovered, how creative people in recovery are when it comes to business.
I think it's lovely, Claire. It's a lovely way of looking at life. But I must say, addicts are not the only people who are creative. I know many creative people who are not addicts, but we do tend, for the reason I was explaining, because our childhood was so bizarre, we had to become creative. I think that was the difference between us and the general population. We had the motive, we had to become creative or snuff it. We'd be finished. So I think we have a tremendous privilege. You'll hear people say that they're grateful recovering addicts, and that's what they're being grateful for. They're being grateful for the opportunity to have the life of their dreams. And here I am, I don't smoke, I don't drink alcohol, I don't eat sugar or white flour, I don't have caffeine or nicotine or any substance. I don't take recreational drugs. I don't take mood-altering prescription drugs. I don't gamble. But I've emphasized all I don't do. But that's what my life is about. It's about what I do. I have a most wonderful relationship with my wife. My wife Meg died after we'd been together for 51 years. I didn't relapse. It was a tragedy. No idea what I was going to do. I was living in people's home as a result of my bankruptcy, as a result of not running my business properly and the fraud by my accountant. I've been on the deck, but, with the help of the 12-step program, I didn't relapse. I was able to continue being the person I was. And then when I came back to London, I met Pat. I knew her peripherally before, but I met her again, and she invited me for lunch, and then she invited me for supper, and then she invited me for the weekend, and then we got married, and here we are, 8 years later. Now, who would take on a bankrupt widower, age 73? Well, she did. And you know, when I wondered why on earth, she said, well, you're fun. Well, I think that's the most wonderful thing. If somebody says I'm fun, then I think that's something that I've got to offer. And if Pat is happy with that, oh heavens, I'm happy with her. I'm in heaven. So a close personal relationship is the most important health factor of all. It's more important than giving up smoking. It's more important than losing weight. It's more important than taking exercise. All those things are small potatoes in health terms. That's in terms of cancer, diabetes, heart attacks, and so on. They're small potatoes compared to having a close personal relationship. So what Pat and I have together is the most wonderful opportunity to stay healthy. But what's the point of health if that's all it is? Without the creativity, there's no magic. I don't want to live longer so I can spend more time being miserable in an old people's home. I want to live now. And that's what I've got. And so peace of mind in spite of unsolved problems. We've all got problems, of course we have. I want peace of mind anyway. Happy and mutually fulfilling relationships. I never say I'm married. I say I'm married so far, because Pat might come in one day and say, you think so? And then the spontaneity and enthusiasm that I was talking about earlier, that I think is what recovery really is. It's not just abstinence. Abstinence is only the starting position. You've got to be abstinent in order to get all the other stuff, but you need to be abstinent right across the board. I mentioned the things that I'm abstinent from, and it's very necessary. I don't want to swap, drinking for smoking, or smoking for gambling, or gambling for binging and starving. What's the point? It's not changing me. It's not changing the quality of my life. It's not a spiritual experience. It's just going from one negative experience to another. And I don't want that. And so I decided, well, let's just get rid of it all. Let's be the person I can be. And that's difficult, because all your addictive nature is channeled into the final outlet. And so the final outlet for many people is cigarettes, or it could be antidepressants, or it could be sugar, or it could be compulsive helping, doing too much for other people and not enough to look after ourselves. These final outlets are very difficult, because then we have no magic fix. We're dependent upon the 12-step program and nothing else. And it is a perfect substitute. The 12-step program enables me to be the person I want to be. Because I don't need to use anything to change the way I feel, because the result of working the steps, I feel good. I feel very happy, and I'm very creative. And that's what I want to continue. So I'm 83 years young, and I don't acknowledge my age. I think it's just a number. But I've got composing to do. I've just finished composing a solo for tenor saxophone. Now, I don't play the saxophone, but I heard other people, and I made a note of the way that they played and the type of music that it worked. And I looked up, the jazz of Duke Ellington and Count Basie and so on, and listened to the way that they compose. And I thought, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what I can write. And that is what's so crucial. Always looking forward. The past is over. In terms of the 12 steps, the word faith or the word God frightens people. I have no religious belief at all. I don't have that sense of faith. But when I look back at what I've come through, such as the death of my wife and my bankruptcy and so on, when I see what I've come through, then I can have faith for the future. I can say, well, if I come through that, maybe I can tackle what comes next. And that, I think, is very important. So the 12 steps is not a religious program. It's a spiritual program looking at the human human spirit of love, trust, honor, innocence, beauty. Those are not intellectual values, they're spiritual values. And it's that the 12-step program enables us to really rejoice in and move forward. I want love, I want hope, trust, I want beauty. These are things that I want in my life, and I get them as a result of doing that simple program. And so this way, if we move forward, we can look forward with real enjoyment, and not just a sense of hope, but the enthusiasm, the eagerness to say, yay, let's go for it.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Robert, for spending some time with us. I could have you on every day, never mind once a month. We'd love you to come back and again and talk with us if you have the time or even the want to. Like I say, I find you fascinating to listen to, and just so wise and so willing to share your experience, strength, and hope with us. And I think, for me, that's the whole purpose of what it is that I try and do, is to just reach that one person that might need a little bit of hope, that might just need to hear that us having a conversation today about how it is possible to turn your life around and to come through and to become the best person that you've been put here to be. And to acquire all these amazing gifts, like creativity, like realizing that actually, we've got an abundance of gifts, and our job in recovery is to just work our way through them and polish the ones that we want to finally tune.
I think it's important to say as well that these gifts and creativity are transferable. They, as the doctor said, they transfer to your normal life, and with that, you inspire other people as well. So, so I just want to say thank you, Dr. Robert, as ever.
Very well.
Perfect. And good luck this afternoon with your composing for the saxophone.
Well,
yeah,
as you know, we keep what we give away. It's, what we give away people spiritually enhances us. If I may just end on an analogy, love is like music. The more you do in music, the more you appreciate it. Sex is like a cake. If you take a slice out of the cake, there's less left behind. So when people confuse love with sex, they're making a fundamental mistake. And what we do in loving people doesn't have to lead to a sexual activity. We can love and love and love and respect. And that's what matters. Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me. And if you do want me again, it'll be my privilege to be here. Thank you.
We would love for you to come again, Robert. Really love you to come again. And maybe what we can do is we can ask people what they would like for us to chat about. I know that we've had a lot of direct messages about family recovery. There's a big, keen interest because not a lot is talked about how families recover, and I mean the family members around the person that's affected by addiction. We talk a lot about recovery, as a recovering addict, but I think there's a big piece of work and a lot of information that people would really benefit from if we could maybe talk a little bit more about family recovery, maybe in our next session. I'll see what our friends who are watching say. Because people continue to watch these chats that we have, and people comment. So any comments are greatly welcome. Any requests that you'd like to hear more about. Like I said, Dr. Robert's a font of all sorts of wonderful knowledge. Kev's a font of wonderful knowledge too. So thank you so much, Robert. And I'd love to hear your recording after it's been done next week. I'm very excited about that for you.
You never know your luck. It's on Friday the 14th. It's being recorded, and if all goes well, I'll play some to you.
Yes, please. We'd love that. Really would love that. So thanks again, Robert. Kev, do you want to finish off?
Sorry, I missed that.
Oh,
I just want to say, thank you very much, Dr. Robert. It's always a privilege Thank you for everyone who's tuned in. Please like our page. It's Kennedy Street, and please tune in for the next one, which I think will probably be next Wednesday.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you next month, if that's okay, Robert. See you same time next month. Lots of love.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.